There's a movement brewing, and that movement is the Me Total lifestyle.
It centers around you keeping your sense of self intact and in gaining clarity of purpose as you age. I'm Carrie.
I'm Joe.
I'm JM.
And we're on a mission to show you how to enjoy friends, fellowship, and life without substance dependence.
It's time to discover how you can begin living a Me Total lifestyle.
Right here on the FUZZEE'ish podcast. Let's go.
Welcome back to the FUZZEE'ish podcast. I'm your host, Joe Quattrone, and today we've got a very special guest, Paul Zolman, author of The Role of Love and the creator of this handy-dandy dice that allows you to kind of live out what your love language is with either a spouse or a peer or a friend in a day-to-day setting. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joe. Pleasure to be with you today. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, so I mean, me and you got a chance to catch up a couple weeks ago, and by all practical measures, you seem like a fairly standard bro, like a dude like myself, kind of in that middle-aged territory. You don't strike me as the kind of guy that would get into love languages and stuff like that. When I typically think about love languages, that's been something that's been in my wife's domain. I don't necessarily associate it with men all that often. How did you get into this line of work? How did you get into coming up with this concept around the role of love and obviously wanting to do something about it to impact society?
It's a great question, Joe. And basically, it's my own problem that whenever you create a business, you're trying to solve a problem. My problem was anger, and I wanted to solve that problem. I grew up in a little angry family, and that with anger comes angry humor, angry vocabulary. It's just a culture all by itself. And I had a lot of that residual left over into my adulthood. And I kept saying to myself, I don't want to be angry. And it's like those double negatives, two negatives multiplied together make a positive. In math, it doesn't work in relationships. That's what got me into it.
That's so funny because I feel like in my life I had a very similar kind of pathway, and usually I consider myself a very kind of zenned out person. Not a lot can rattle the cage, if you will. But once upon a time, in my early 20s to late teens, that's where I was really in my formative years dealing with a lot of emotional baggage that I had from my youth. And me and my wife talk about that from time to time. She asks me, sometimes when she's going through her own turbulent emotions with people in her life, she's like, how come you never really, blame people for your past or what's happened in your past? And my line to her is always, that person that would have got mad died when I was 25 years old. When I made a commitment I just didn't want to hang on to the negativity anymore. And so I just haven't even thought about some of those negative things from my past in about 19, 20 years now. So I totally get what you're going for here. That's awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like that you've had very similar past, but Joe, I actually was blaming my father up until about age 35,
Wow.
blaming him for awkward situations, both in public and at home.
Oh.
If you get angry in a public setting, all of a sudden your family doesn't even know you. Everybody's scattered. You're repelling people like crazy. I did not want to do that anymore. I wanted people to come to me and just be with me rather than scatter when I had these bouts of anger. And I realized that that letting go, that blame was for me, it was something that, well, if I can blame someone, I don't have to change. And it is that way for victims. It's that way for everybody that blames someone. They don't have to change because it's their fault. It's the other person's fault. There's no change on the horizon. I'm not going to change because it's their fault. And it's just one of those decisions. It really makes a decision that you're in a spot that you're not going to change. And you're not going to go be worse. You're not going to be better, but you're not going to change. You're going to continue to blame other people. And my father actually at age 35 had been dead for 7 years.
Wow.
He had already passed away. So, you caught on quickly, Joe, and kudos to you for catching on quickly. I realized that and just woke up one day and said, oh, how can I blame him? He's already gone. I can't talk it out, and I've got to take responsible for my own actions. It was a awakening moment, that's for sure.
Yeah. And now because obviously, people know us in this podcast for talking about coming off of alcohol or alcohol cessation. What I like to call it, we're not like an alcoholism podcast or anything like that, but I like to think about it as excellence through temperance. How much did alcohol have to do with these issues that you had growing up? Was there anybody in your family that was an alcoholic? Was that a contributing factor to any of these things?
Absolutely, Joe, and that's why I'm here as well. My father was an alcoholic. Uh, his idea of a date, he dated my mother every Friday. I have to give that to him. I can't even keep up with that with my own wife right now, or nor have I ever been able to keep up with consistently one day a week dating my wife or a significant other. The thing about it was he wasn't very creative about it. It was always the Maverick bar, always over alcohol. That my mother and he would have this date. That would be their date every Friday night. And I'm number 10 of 11 in my family, Joe. And so as number 10, I can imagine my mother starting at the very top of all the children, kind of telling how her week went to my father, starting at the top, and all of them are brothers, except I'm actually a thorn between two roses. I have an older sister and a younger sister. So by the time he gets down through all the boys, and boys do annoying things, they're like puppies. They roll around and they swat each other and they break arms, and they do this all accidentally and not on purpose, but just things happen.
Right.
And so he's getting annoyed. He's stacking all these annoyances, and he's ready to blow at number 10. And here I am, number 10. And I either get the belt or I get a severe spanking. And that seemed like the case for most weekends. I dreaded the weekends, Joe, when I was growing up. It was just really bad because of that alcohol. As he's becoming imbibed, he's becoming more and more angry.
Yeah. And now when you were saying, when you kind of went through your progression where you blamed people for what was going wrong in your life, you were very angry to all of a sudden you weren't. One of the things that's common when we talk to a lot of our guests is there seems to be not just the replacement of the bottle, not the replacement of the physical, tangible alcohol that needs to be replaced, but it's the replacement of the rituals and the habits and all of the things that, reminded you of the physical liquid and the alcohol and stuff like that. And while I know it's not apples for apples, did you have to go through some of that ritual cleansing as well when you were trying to keep yourself into a positive mind frame or love people more? Like, was it just like a switch where you were just like, forget about it, I can be in the exact same, restaurant or environment, and I'm just going to make a mental switch to love people versus hate people?
Great question, Joe. Let me explain it this way, that with anger and with that environment that I grew up in, it's a culture all by itself. It has a vocabulary of the culture. There's a humor of the culture. There's sarcasm. There's the put downs. There, all that competition, all is in that culture. And when you try to break up that culture, it's very difficult. But I tried to break it down into pieces that I wanted to get rid of. And you have to kind of break it up that way. One of the pieces of that angry culture was looking over the fence into what somebody else was doing and try to think that you have control over that person. And that's the angry culture that, well, that neighbor is doing something. I don't like that. And it's bothering me. And I'm going to get annoyed. And he's going to do something else and I'm going to get annoyed. And you start winding up here, and then you're going to flash. I realized that I had that same characteristic from my father. So what I was doing was saying, what's wrong with that person? And why are they doing it that way? When I realized that that's not even my call. They can do whatever they want. It's their life. It's their yard.
Yeah.
And when I realized that I got to stay in my lane to have any sense of happiness, and that rolling the die or the cube that you just mentioned, rolling the cube every day helped me replace that behavior of saying, what's wrong with that person? Now I'm watching for what's right about that person. So I would think that at least 10 to 20% of people have bad things that they do or mistakes that they make, and all the rest is good. So 80 to 90% of the people out there really are good people, and they're doing good things, and they're trying to do the right thing. Watch for that 80 to 90%. I was watching for the 10 to 20%. That was my life. Now I'm watching for that. I am so busy, Joe, watching for that. I don't even think about being annoyed at what others people are doing. I'm focused on what I'm sending out, love that I'm sending out without any expectation of it coming back, but trusting the universe, the laws of the universe, like the law of the harvest. You plant a seed, it's going to come. Or karma, or the law of attraction, whatever you want to call it. I'm trusting those laws of the universe. Someday that love's going to come back.
Right.
But when I'm sending it out, I'm not expecting it back right away. What happened though is I'm watching for people to light up. When I'm practicing one of the genres, so there's just 2 instructions on the cube. When I'm practicing one of those, I'm sending that all day long. If it's touch, I'm doing the high five, the fist bump, that sort of thing. When people light up, when I do something like that, I've discovered what their love language is, and I've made their day. There's a satisfaction of helping people have a great day. They're going to also spread that to their circle of influence and help their circle of influence have a great day. So the transition from that negativity that comes with the angry culture to loving it's 180 degrees, but it was so easy because I'm looking for the bad when I'm looking for what's wrong with people. Now I'm looking for what's right with people, and there's so much more right than there is wrong that it keeps me so busy. I don't even have time to be annoyed.
I know. And how much do you feel like today's modern society, with like the headline news and the social media and stuff like that, contribute to people's bad moods or angry culture?
Well, I think it's been the trainer for us. It really has been what people read because there's nothing else to read. They want current events, but they don't really want all that bad news. Why don't you do current events of good things that people are doing? I mean, seriously, why don't we focus on all the good that's going around the world and leave that 5 to 10% of the news for bad things that are going on? Why do we advertise bad things? Is that to help people buy into these bad things? That's okay to do? That, that sounds fun. I'm going to go kill somebody too. It's ridiculous. Why would they advertise that for those people that are doing that type of bad out there?
I don't know. I mean, I do know. I've got an extensive background in this type of psychology, but so from what I've gathered, there tends to be a slight negativity bias amongst human beings in general, and that dates back to like the caveman era, where it was fight or flight, and if we were going to get a meal that night, or if we were going to live, we had to be somewhat on edge, or wound up, if you will, always alert. We had to be, and negativity can activate cortisol and create stress, and sometimes stress is a good thing. But I think the media empires have taken that to the next level, where something was a slight bias, like let's say 55-45 or 60-40 or something like that, not even that. And they've taken it all the way to the polarity and all the way to the extreme. So 90% of what they do is salacious headlines and fake news, and 10% of it's actually good. But the other thing that I've also been studying a lot is, it's the weirdest thing, because even good news needs bad news, right? So like, it's hard to have good news unless you have, or it's hard to have good news unless you have the bad news first. Because we as a human species, we like to tell stories. And we've been telling stories ever since those caves. And all of those stories have been relatively traditional, where you've got this beginning, middle, and end, and there's always some sort of an overcoming of some sort of an obstacle. And so I think even if we wanted to, it's hard to get rid of all the bad, because you need the bad to make the good more interesting.
Well, and you need that adversity to know when good is good. Yeah, absolutely. I'm in total agreement there. Has to be that.
Talk to
opposition.
me a little bit about how you worked this dice. So like when I got it in the mail, I was like, all right, well let's go. Me and my wife, let's just figure out how we're going to interact today. But is it more just like for your personal self so you can know how to interact with the world every day? Like how would you like to see people using this thing?
There's several ways that it can be applied, Joe, and great question. So the way I do it is that you've got the 5 love languages, that you've got the touch, you've got the words, you got the gifts, service, and time. But there's the sixth side is actually surprise me. So on that day, you're doing random acts of kindness, but there's just 2 instructions. You roll dice every day. That is the love language you practice all day that day to everyone.
Mhm.
You're sending it out all day long. And as I mentioned, you're sending it out without any expectation that it'll come back at that time, but just trust the universe. It'll come back at some point in time. Contrast that with anger. You send anger out, you're getting an immediate return on your investment. Why would you do that? Why would you even be critical of your neighbor? Because you know what? That's a boomerang that's coming right back. When you throw a boomerang up, it's it has a lesser velocity than when it comes down because of the gravity. When it comes back to you, that anger comes back to you. It's going to be multiplied maybe 10 times worse than what you send it out. Why would you even choose to do that? So in contrast to that, the sending the love out is a character trait that I needed. I was single when I created this, Joe, and I didn't have a significant other, as Dr. Chapman suggests. Did not have a significant other to practice these love languages with. So I thought, who in the heck am I going to love? Where? And then it dawned on me, oh, I'll just love everybody. Nobody I know is with their significant other 24/7. Nobody.
Mm.
Sometimes some people are very thankful at that, Joe, that they're that they're not with that significant other 24/7. But I didn't need a part-time job. I needed a character development. And so practicing it with everybody was full-time all the time. It's not like, woohoo, I did the dishes, I'm done. It's not an event anymore for me. It's a process. I needed that process to change the generational, pass it on, slug in the shoulder, pass it on type of thing. It was just that angry attitude. I needed to get rid of that. I needed to change the perception of the Zolman family. And we were perceived as an angry family. And so I just wanted that perception to change. And I thought, I've got to start it now. Who's going to
Mhm.
start it if it's not me?
I hear that. And so, taking it back to the love languages for a minute, you didn't create the love languages, but you're kind of drafting off the love languages here. Tell us a little bit more about your personal style when it comes to how you like to receive and give love. I tend to recall reading in your bio that you were more of somebody that was, about physical touch, but not for the right reasons originally. And then has that shifted over time since you've been, a practitioner of the love languages? Has it shifted off of physical touch and gone to something else? But start with what you were perceiving your love language as when you got started, and what and how that might have like gotten you interested in reading about this philosophy.
That's a really good question. And I think there's a few moving parts there. One of the moving parts was that I didn't really get coming from that anger environment that I came from was Dr. Chapman saying, well, if I take the test, I can find out what my love language is. But what's the directional there? Is it what I like to give away, or is it what I like to receive? And I realized that the test is mostly what you like to receive. And so it could be like 10 love languages. What you like to give away is maybe different than what you like to receive. So the directional there is just very, very interesting. You ask it both directions there. So what I like to give away, I think I like to give away service a whole lot more than anything else. I
Yeah.
just like to do things for people. I'm involved with there's a assisted living facility just a couple blocks away from me, and 2 or 3 times a week I'll go down there and I'll go play puzzle with these guys. That's what they like. They just like to just hang out. That's all they can do right now is mostly just hang out. So spending time with those people, serving them, doing whatever they ask me to do, that's what I like to do that way. I also am involved in several charities around town. There's a charity that does lunches for school children that are disadvantaged, that won't have lunch on the weekends if they don't prepare and pack those lunches. They're used to school lunch being provided to them during the school week, but on the weekends they don't have any food to eat. So that we provide lunches for them in that regard. So I'm involved with that charity. So service is what I like to give away. What I like to receive used to be physical touch, because I thought that was that was what love was. When I was younger, obviously that's all I got, physical touch. And that's how, they express, well, I'm hitting you because I love you. I'm correcting you because I love you. And it's just a bad excuse for love. It was really a horrible excuse for love. And we'll find people doing that, making an excuse. I'm correcting you. I'm criticizing you because I love you. And that's really those are two different things.
Tough love is what
Yeah.
they call it.
Yeah. No, my tough love was, well, if you don't like dinner tonight, maybe you'll like it tomorrow. That was my tough love. And just, are you going to eat or not? I mean, that's what it is. And that's was tough love I practice as a parent. But I think that to your question of what the love language that I like to receive is mostly the words now. So it really has evolved to the words. And I think that that's the beauty of what I'm presenting here, is that you'll learn all 5 love languages to give it away, but it improves your vision. It gives you that peripheral vision to see it when it's coming your way. It probably won't be your primary love language. When it is, obviously you're going to light up. But when it's not, what you do is say, oh, I see they're loving on me. I can respond appropriately to that. And I've missed so many people that have been loving on me and realized that they were loving on me after the fact, long after the fact. And I didn't even see it, just because they didn't know the love language they were sending it my way. Now that I have that vision, I can see that they're sending love my way. It improves communication. It improves your reaction to the love coming your way. I really can't bid love to come my way, but I can respond when it does.
So this one's for my fellas out there. Talk to me about the gifting love language, because I know my wife loves to receive gifts. I personally hate getting gifts, mainly just because anything I want, I buy for myself. Like I don't feel like, I don't think there's really a lot of stuff I actually need out there in the world. But my wife, on the other hand, loves getting gifts. And I think that's one of the reasons I was so turned off to the love language for so many years, is because I think my opinion on gifting is just a little bit negative. Like how self-serving that you have this gifting thing that's going to cost us an arm and a leg, that, I've got to keep fueling this environment where you're not happy unless I'm buying you gifts. Meanwhile, I don't want any of that in return. So do you deal with a lot of people that have had that perspective in the past? That's why I think I led off this interview thinking that the love languages was more of a feminine thing. It's because all the instances that I've seen with this philosophy are wives telling their husbands that they need to read this book.
Yeah, exactly. I'm laughing, Joe, only because it must be the air in Tennessee. I have a son that lives in Tennessee, and he has had to die. And one day he rolled gifts. He said, "Oh, I'm not going to do that." He rolled the die again, and he came up gifts again. Oh, he rolled it again, gifts again. And finally, the 4th time he rolled it, it was gifts. He said, "Okay, I'm going to do it." So let me explain it this way. It's just that Tennessee air that
It must be.
I know it's probably more prevalent than that, but as you look at gifts, you need to look at it a little bit. Try to be creative without money. So a gift of a smile, and I see gifts as more of an umbrella of all the love languages, because giving this love away in all these areas of that were identified by Dr. Chapman can be a gift to that person. A hug could be a gift. Spending time with that person could be a gift. Cooking dinner as a service could be a gift. All these things, be creative about giving a gift, something that really won't cost any money. And if you focus on that, then the time when it is time to buy the gift and package it that way, that it'll be meaningful as well. but giving these gifts to that person that loves gifts in that way. Just for example, I have a couple that I was working with here locally that he knew that her love language was words, but one day he rolled gifts. He says, "What am I going to do?" Then it dawned on him, well, I'll write her a note and put it in a box. He wrapped it in a box, and she opened the gift. She doesn't like gifts, but she opened the gift and realized it's a note. And she was absolutely ecstatic. She was delighted that that was what was in the gift. So a note could be a gift, but it's just be creative about it and work with it and say this is a gift, and help your wife understand that these also are gifts. Gift is the umbrella for all the love languages, in my opinion.
Gotcha. I think my wife has a different interpretation of what a gift is. And it involves using my credit card.
I'm sorry. Sorry for
yeah.
you. I really feel for you, Joe.
You're listening to the FUZZEE'ish podcast. We're here with Paul Zolman of Roll of Love. So, Paul, what's next on the horizon for you? Is it getting this book out there farther and wider? Is there anything you want to direct our audience members towards?
I do want to get the book far and wider. I really think that this is something that's basic, Joe. And what I look at, the way I look at this is that as I was stacking annoyance upon annoyance upon annoyance until I flashed, these are the basics of how to love. These are stair steps that if you stack these kindness, just very similar to as I was stacking the annoyances, but stack the kindness on top of one another, you're going to get to the point of compassion, or you get to the point of charity, or you get to the point of intimacy, or forgiveness, or sympathy, or empathy. You're going to get to those higher laws of love. These are the basics. And if we can understand and spread that understanding that these are the basics, then we'll get to those higher laws. But we're like living a Mosaic law, that it's the lower law of it's just something that should be preparatory for getting to those higher laws of love. We really need to get there, and that's one thing. I'm trying to spread this far and wide. I'm trying to develop a nonprofit organization that actually would fund putting these die in the cube in the schools. In the school system, the way I see it, Joe, is that at the beginning of the day, the class, as a class, rolls the die. The teacher, it takes 2 seconds for that. I don't want to take much of the classroom time because there's a lot that they need to cover. But what I do want to provide for them with is a tamp down of disciplinary action and a increase of learning. So if you don't have to handle disciplinary problems, there's more time for learning. The way this works is that they roll a die in the morning. Teacher says for 30 to 45 seconds, class, this is the type of behavior that we're looking for. At the end of the day, then the teacher provides each class member with a PDF version of this, of what they rolled, opportunities they saw to love in each way, and what they did about those opportunities. Becomes a journal, so to speak, for that child, a love journal. The teacher will just check it off, send it home. Those astute parents would actually keep those in chronological order. So by the end of that first grade, by the end of that sixth grade year, that child has a journal of what they loved in that year, whether they loved their teacher. I have experience, Joe, of remembering and loving my first grade teacher. I don't remember second grade. I don't remember third grade. I don't remember fourth or fifth grade. I remember sixth grade. But there is something about those teachers that you loved when you're there. I would love to have had a journal, something about that. Why did I love that? So I'm trying to get that into the school systems and looking for corporate funding as I create a nonprofit, looking for corporate funding to help that along. The second thing is that we really need to take this into the workplace. A lot of people with the sexual harassment and everything that's gone on over the last 20, 30 years or more, that we really need to come back to loving kindness, just decency within the workplace, just and find a way to practice love within the workplace. Just if you can imagine it, if there's hostile workers around, the productivity is going to be way down. If they're working together in a cooperative way, the production is going to be a lot higher, and we can rework that and just retool that a little bit. That's some of the projects in the future that I'm working on. Something that we've got to take this not only from a personal level, but let's do it to family level. Let's do it to a corporate level. Let's do it to community level. Let's take it really to the world.
I think it's a great cause, especially with how much animosity there is, even in the workplace. Especially in the workplace, there's so many people at each other's throats these days. That's why I'm kind of glad I dropped out of corporate America. And the crazy thing that I see is, I don't know the exact quote, but Dr. King said something like, you can't heal hatred with more hate. Only love can do that, or something like that to those
I
tunes.
love that quote. Yeah.
And I find it to be so much, so refreshing, because, I've spent 20 years in corporate America, and it seems like everybody's walking on eggshells right now. And it's just the antidote seems to be like, when I hear terminology like anti-racist, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I get it. I get you have to be like, somebody that's like actively opposed to racism. But it's also just in the terminology that you're using. Just anti in front of anything like is also like very negative sounding, So
yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of like bad teachings going on in America right now, in the school system and in corporate America, and they're teachings that are propelled by hate, which is, I think, if we could get back to a system of not only telling each other to love each other, but also being proud of our efforts, like, loving not only each other, but our cities and our states and our country and all those kind of things. Like, I think will make a stronger country for sure.
Absolutely. We really need to be for something instead of against it.
I agree. Well, it's been so good having you on. And for those of you in the audience that want to get in touch with Paul, where would you suggest that they check you out? Is there an Instagram handle or a website you'd like to promote?
Absolutely. The website is rolloflove.com, ROLE of love. Kind of did a play on words. Your ROLL, the cube, that's outside of you. ROLE is something that changes within you, and that's the choice for the word for the website, roleoflove.com. You'll find the book, the cube, the journal on there. I've got a bundle price right now, especially for your listeners. It's about 20% off, $29.99 for that bundle, and it's cheaper than you can buy it on Amazon. I do have, for your listeners that are listening to this podcast and not watching it, they can buy, they can choose to listen to the Audible version of the book. They'll find that on Amazon. You don't want to type in love anything on Amazon. You're going to get love a million things. But you want to type in my name. It'll take you right to that Audible version of the book.
Gotcha. And Paul, really quick parting words. Like, I want to end with one quick question. How much easier do you think it would be to kind of ascend to this higher, level of loving and putting more love out into the universe if you're not drunk all the time?
There is something about sobriety that really, that conscious effort. I think it's hard to be intentional about doing good things when you're inebriated, and it's really hard to be conscious about doing good, because you really don't have control of your emotions or your body or many things that you don't have control over when you're inebriated. And I think that being sober is really, really the key. It really is. It's a better life.
Gotcha. Well, thanks so much for joining us. All right, that's been it, folks. Well, thank you for joining the FUZZEE'ish podcast. And until next week, I'm Joe Q, signing off.